Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Risa Hontiveros. Today on the program, outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo passes on the torch as the leader of the opposition, with a supermajority supporting the incoming administration, who will comprise the Senate minority. And what will the next opposition leader prioritize in the next Congress? Senator Risa Hontiveros joins us live. Outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo relinquishes her role as the face and leader of the opposition. Another woman and the lone opposition bet who made it to the Senate Magic 12 is set to take on the responsibility. Senator Risa Hontiveros. Robredo praises Hontiveros for using her position to give voice to the powerless and for pushing for good governance. She's confident Hontiveros will continue the opposition's cause.
Andito lang kami lagi magsusuporta sa iyo. Kami yung mga sundalo mo na ngayon, Sen. Risa. Kaya asahan mo yung aming, kung paano mo sinuportahan yung buong sambayanan ng Pilipino. Ganon din yung suportang aasahan mo lahat sa amin.
Let's go straight to the source of the story, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Good morning, Senator. Thank you so much for being here. All right, Senator, can you hear me? All right, we are just waiting to fix communications with Senator Risa Hontiveros there. She is joining us live here on The Source to speak about being the new head of the opposition as Vice President Leni Robredo steps down from her post on Thursday, June 30th at noon. All right, do we have Senator Risa back on the line? All right. Good morning, Senator Risa. Can you hear me? All right, I believe we are still fixing that issue, but you are looking at videos from the swearing in of Senator Hontiveros yesterday at the office of the Vice President. And of course, the Vice President herself, Leni Robredo, administering that oath for the re-elected Senator Hontiveros, who is the only opposition senator who made it to the Senate Magic 12 slate. All right, we will be taking a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I am Risa Hontiveros. Our source today, Senator Risa Hontiveros. Good morning, Senator. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Senator, yesterday, Vice President Leni Robredo, she passed the reins of the opposition to you. You are now the new leader of the opposition. How do you plan to lead the opposition in this type of political climate? And how challenging will this role be for you?
It would be very challenging, not just for any one leader, but for the whole opposition. But first, I just want to thank VP Leni for officiating at that very dignified and heartfelt oath-taking ceremony yesterday. She has really held and steered the reins for our country, for the opposition, this past half-decade. And I think moving forward, we'll carry a lot of valuable lessons that we've learned in our time with her. I think, Ria, all of us in the opposition will really have to take stock of things again. Think about, ask, listen, talk with each other, not just within the opposition, but within the larger citizenry. What are the issues that we are facing and how do we want to solve them? I think being opposition isn't just opposing any one administration. It's presenting alternatives to long-time issues, presenting alternatives to the very system itself.
Ma'am, what kind of opposition then can we expect under a Marcos presidency? We know that the elections were very divisive, to say the least. Are we looking at a very hard-liner opposition here, or one that's willing to compromise?
Oh, I think all this time, the opposition has shown, and in particular, the minority in the Senate has shown that within that independent institution of the Senate, those of us in the minority have exhibited the willingness and the capability to work with any other colleague in the majority, especially on common advocacies, bills or resolutions needing investigation, or budget interventions needing a bipartisan consensus within the Senate. And within the Senate, the minority that we are building right now will continue to have that attitude and behavior with our colleagues in the majority. And I think with the administration as well, we will be prepared to raise the critical points, constructive criticism. We will also be prepared to support good programs that the administration may launch. And we will continue, Ria, to present alternatives. So this won't be anything new from the minority in the 18th Congress, where for one, I was a part of that minority and able to pass about 24 laws under the outgoing administration. And moving forward, my main interest is that in the minority of the 19th Congress, we be a genuine and effective minority, able to also pass laws needed by our people, and that the minority will help not just the opposition outside the Senate, but also the broad citizenry, to arrive at broader unities on issues of common concern.
Right. So what kind of hurdles do you expect in the next 6 years?
A lot, Ria. We have an accumulation of hurdles in the past decades and in the past few years. Some of them we've attempted to clear, some we've been able to clear, but there's still a lot of unfinished business, still a lot of loose ends not tied up on our plate now. And I'm talking about remaining challenges in our democratization process. Tasks unfinished since the People Power Revolution, the recognition and compensation of human rights victims of the past decades, not to speak of the EJK victims in the past years, the unfinished business of drawing accountability for plunder in the past decades, the disrespect against women in the past years, the treason with China in the West Philippine Sea in the past years, and of course, the very urgent concerns of really surviving, becoming healthy again from the pandemic, the concern of emerging from this recession, and really healing and putting our economy back on track again, from the past several years of unemployment, greater unemployment, and underemployment, and facing all our accumulated democracy challenges. And still the task of any government, any legislature as part of that government, any opposition as part of our society, of truly rebuilding and building unities among our people. So it seems that over time, more of these tasks and more of the unfinished business is placed on our plate as a people, and we in the opposition will step up to that task as well.
Right. It might be a new Congress, but so many issues and problems continue to persist. Now, you mentioned there's so much that we learned from the last opposition leader, VP Leni Robredo. What kind of reminders did VP Leni share with you in terms of leading the opposition?
I think VP Leni gives us many important lessons for the opposition at large and for our people, even larger than us in the opposition. For example, I'm very excited for the imminent launch of her Angat Buhay, largest volunteer network in the history of the country so far. I think the date we heard about before was the 1st of July, so just a few days from now, to be one of the front lines where we can continue to relieve the poverty and the inequality on the ground. Another lesson I'll be carrying forward from VP Leni is the necessity of continuing to organize on the ground across different parties and different movements, especially Ria, to really include more and more Filipinos in the promise and the tasks of our democratization process, to really make the democratization that we won in the people power revolution, to make it matter on a day-to-day basis in terms, yes, of our political rights and civil liberties, and also in terms of the economic upliftment of our people, in terms of genuine and broader unity in terms of our culture as peoples of the Philippines. I'm also carrying with from her moving forward the lesson that we cannot act early and strongly enough against fake news and trolling and historical revisionism. Maria Ressa also in her Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech said that without truth, without facts, we cannot have the truth, and without truth, we cannot have trust. So these are things we need to take back from the past years and decades of fighting to be truth tellers, no, as a people, as different sectors and from different regions in the Philippines.
Yeah, some serious work to be done there. A very tall order. Ma'am, we will be taking a short break. This is A Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanwatco Trillo. Our source today is Senator Risa Hontiveros. All right, ma'am, you know, we were talking about the opposition and what it looks like now. And your biggest allies, VP Leni and other opposition leaders like Senator Kiko Pangilinan and, of course, the newly retired Senator Frank Drilon, they no longer hold any official positions in government. What roles will they play in the opposition?
Oh, I'm sure that they will continue to play significant roles in the opposition and in our society, especially in these very challenging times. Earlier, we were talking about VP Leni. Soon, we're expecting to launch the Angat Buhay volunteer movement and NGO. Senator Kiko, I know, will continue with his decades-long advocacy about agricultural modernization here in the Philippines. And I certainly look forward to both of them remaining active in various capacities in our political life. Sen Frank, our beloved minority leader, he's not the type of citizen who can retire actually from public life or from citizenship. And I'm sure that we will continue to hear from him in the public conversation and on the ground in terms of the health and economic recovery of our country. Of course, the development of his beloved Iloilo province and city and Panay Island, and practically all of the questions about democratization these days. And beyond them, we have many, Ria, we have many leaders from the ground up, from our local government units, in civil society, in private sector as well. And I'm sure that we will all be stepping up to the task in these next challenging years.
Senator, can you update us on the status of your talks with possible members of the Senate minority? Right now, is it still just 2 confirmed members, that of course being you and Senator Coco Pimentel?
That's right, Ria. Senator Coco and I are committed to forming the minority in the 19th Congress. And we are already beginning to talk about common legislative agenda between us, our offices, the minority for the 19th Congress. We still do have about a month till the opening of session and the first SONA of the incoming administration on the 25th July. So let's see if any more of our colleagues in the incoming Senate will be joining us in the minority. But even now, I'm already excited about being minority with Sen Coco.
So, ma'am, who will the minority leader be? Is it true that you've agreed for Senator Coco Pimentel to be the minority leader?
We are focusing first on forming the minority, and then discussing the division of labor will be on our next agenda. Who will serve as minority leader, who will serve for the minority, for example, in the Commission on Appointments, in the Senate Electoral Tribunal, and in the committees of the Senate. So we'll be talking about that very soon, within the next month, Ria.
Right. You said you do have a month to try to build the minority. Ma'am, have you spoken to the Cayetano siblings, or are they at all inclined to join the minority?
Well, I heard from the start that Sen Alan was interested. There have been some bilateral talks on the side. Not yet a group meeting. Perhaps that will be forthcoming in the next month. So please just stay tuned for any other possible developments in the minority.
All right. Now, for Senator Cheese Escudero, he said that he will be joining the majority and that he will be voting for Senator Miggs as Senate President. What was your reaction to this? Was it a surprise for you at all?
Well, I guess it was partly a surprise, but partly not. Senchis has served in the minority before, so it would have been a welcome thing on my part for him to have joined us in the minority. But now that he has made his decision to join the majority, I still look forward to making common cause with him from the minority, again, on particular bills or resolutions or budget interventions based on our common advocacies.
All right, ma'am, we're going to take another short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. Our source today is Senator Risa Hontiveros. Ma'am, welcome back. Let's get right into it. You know, there's this looming majority in both chambers of Congress. In the Senate, it's basically a 22 majority and a 2 minority, at least as of now. Would you say that, just looking at the numbers, that the voice of the opposition is weak now in the Senate?
Not at all, Ria. Sen Coco and I both have a long tradition in the democratization struggle since at least our college years in common, and me since my high school teenage years. And although, of course, democracy is also, in certain important moments, about the math of things when it comes down to a vote. But as we were talking about earlier, in the minority, we are capable of making common cause with the majority and drawing their support, the support of members of the majority, to advocacies which we may hold in common. So yes, there is the math of 22 vis-a-vis 2 as of today. Let's see if our 2 will still be added to in the coming month. But depending on how we position ourselves within the institution and how we communicate with our fellow travelers and kindred spirits, our constituencies outside the Senate, we can, I am very hopeful, still make a strong push, still raise strong voices for checks and balances and for fiscalizing very, not just important, but essential elements of any democratization process. So outside the Senate, for me, there is the opposition. And beyond the opposition, Ria, there are our people, regardless of who we voted for in the election, but our people who have been struggling for a fuller democracy these past decades, who have been all suffering from the pandemic and the recession in the past years are people who probably share many questions in common with me this morning about why are we having still so many difficulties with our democracy, with our economic development, with forming and preserving unities among our people. And of course, Ria, for to be able to even ask and craft answers and solutions to these questions, we need more democracy, not less of it. And having more of the political democracy, our human rights, our civil liberties, then gives us more elbow room and leg room to work for the reforms up to our economy and our culture that will not just make democracy more meaningful to our people in concrete ways on a day-to-day level, but will strengthen that very democracy itself. Something that is a challenge now, not just in the Philippines, but in many other countries all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of reforms, I want to spend our last few minutes together talking about priority bills in the 19th Congress. For you, what are your top 3 bills?
Okay, I already have a top 10 and I'm working on my top 11 to 20, but top 3 would include the Linga para kay Lolo at Lola bill for universal pension for senior citizens, and then bills on the rights and welfare of our workers in the gig and informal economies, including one on the maternity cash aid for women in the informal and gig economies. And of course, the walang kamatayang bills like SOGI equality and security of tenure bills.
All right, ma'am, will you still be leading the Senate Committee on Women? And what will be the priority specifically if you do handle this committee?
I hope I'll still be chairing that committee, Ria, based on news that I read and heard from the incoming Senate President. And I hope it will be formalized by the Senate on July 25. And if I will still chair the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, of course, priorities will be that maternity aid for women in the informal and gig economies, more bills to protect our children. For example, after the domestic administrative adoption law, perhaps a bill on the rights and welfare of children and youth with disabilities, no, among our persons with disability. And of course, the SOGI equality bill will count as a priority of the Committee on Women.
Right, ma'am. Now, the International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan wants to reopen the investigation on the killings due to President Duterte's war on drugs. Should the Marcos administration allow this probe, and do you think they will?
Well, I hope that they will. I think that they should. In any case, it is our state obligation as a member of the ICC during the time that the case got on the road and the process was started. I think it's part of clearing our plate of some of our unfinished business about human rights from the decades past and from these years past to give justice to the EJK victims and their widowed and orphaned families.
All right, on another issue, ma'am, the Senate Committee of the Whole has released its report on the smuggling of agricultural products, and it's tagged 22 individuals as alleged protectors and smugglers, and 11 of them, that's half of them, are ranking officials from Customs, Agriculture Department, and even 2 local officials. What's your reaction to this, ma'am?
That is a very welcome development, and I congratulate my beloved Senate and all my colleagues in the Senate, particularly of the 18th Congress. And I am very hopeful that like the Pastilla scam investigation of the Senate Committee on Women, this investigation of no less than the Committee of the Whole will finally reduce until eliminate the smuggling of agricultural products through our ports, strengthen our Bureau of Customs for this task, do justice to our farmers, fisher folk, MSMEs in the agricultural sector, deliver the due revenues to government, And, based on the findings and recommendations of that committee of the whole, really make way for greater accountability on this issue, and make way for the strengthening, once and for all, the strengthening of our agricultural sector, especially in the midst of the current food crisis, which we must not allow to turn into a food catastrophe.
Right, ma'am, President-elect Marcos has said that for now he will take the helm of the Department of Agriculture. What will the effect of his leadership there be on this present situation in light of this report?
Well, I hope that he will bring the full force of his office to preempting a food catastrophe. There's no lack of solid recommendations on his table. For example, institutionalizing and scaling up the efforts coming out of the Philippine Rural Development Program, breaking down the so-called silos into which agriculture has been broken up these past decades, one for, say, credit, one for inputs, one for post-harvest facilities, and bring them all together into a comprehensive approach, instrument to bear on the agricultural sector, long-standing issues. And of course, I hope that the president-elect, as he serves as the agriculture secretary for now, will do justice to our stakeholders in the agriculture sector, especially in the rural areas, our farmers, fisher folk, MSMEs in the countryside, who need to have the full package of executive support programs and legislative support as well, including in terms of correcting the policy framework on tariffs, on protection against smuggling itself that we were talking about earlier, and really earmarking revenues to support agriculture as our engine of growth, and now also our engine of recovery from the pandemic and recession, and the last line of defense against the food crisis turning into what economists are warning could become a food catastrophe if we don't act yesterday and correctly.
All right, ma'am, I'm afraid that is all we have time for, but we thank you so much for coming here on The Source this morning. Thank you very much, Senator Risa Hontiveros. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Ria Tanwat Cotrillo. You're watching CNN Philippines.